What is good, YouTube? Warstu here with another video on the future of the DC universe. So if you are new around it, make sure to subscribe to never miss any of the Marvel DC pop culture based content that we try to deliver on a daily basis. If you could, subscribe to the channel, turn notifications on, and comment down below. Also, if you could, check us out on Instagram at Warstu to see the beautiful face behind the beautiful voice. Also, check us out on Twitter at WarstuG. Right, let's get into today's video. So we're going to go over a wide spectrum of different DC universe stories that have come out recently from The Rock and also James Gunn. So, as we know, Black Adam has just, technically, it's not finished its run, but it's out on digital now. It's #1 on digital, and I don't know why a lot of people seem to think this, but I really did like Black Adam. If you go watch my review, I was really positive about that movie. I really liked it. But it comes down to box office numbers, traditionally. It really does. Now, a lot of people start throwing numbers out, but look what Iron Man 1 did. And then you look at what Iron Man 1 did, 580 million. Iron Man wasn't huge in the comics. He wasn't huge. He wasn't worldwide known when they first released Iron Man 1. So whenever someone comes out with, but Iron Man 1 didn't do great. So we get it. Black Adam was introducing essentially the Justice Society of America. If you don't watch shows like Titans or the Arrowverse, or you're actually a comic book fan, you would have already known about the Justice Society of America, and you already would have known about Black Adam to a somewhat degree, because he's not huge. He's not huge in the comics, and everyone likes to say he was, but he was not crazy. He wasn't huge in the comics at all. So you shouldn't really make the comparison, but you kind of can make the comparison. You really can, because Black Adam didn't do very well at the box office. And it was a good move for them to actually bring it out on digital now for the holiday season. And whilst it's still at the cinema, so they can make money at the box office, whilst also making money on the Blu-ray. Or obviously it comes out on Blu-ray soon, on the digital downloads, and Blu-rays will come out shortly. So at the moment, I mean, it doesn't look too bad if you look at it on the spectrum of the overall, total for the year. I mean, it's the 12th highest movie of the year, 378 million, of which 52% is from America, which is not a good thing, because domestically, America is a big country, but it's not bigger than the rest of the world. It's still got to open in Japan, sure. So it will get somewhat close to $400 million. And yes, it was an introduction movie. But then if you look at all the other movies, you've got to be fair. Okay, cool. Yeah, Henry Cavill's Superman, Man of Steel. Yeah, it did make $600 million. But yes, it was the introduction to that version of Superman. Wonder Woman did 800 million. Aquaman did 1.1 billion. I mean, Shazam somewhat did similar. This did 363. Birds of Prey, 200. That was just Wonder Woman 984 flop, but people blame the pandemic and day-and-day digital releases. It's kind of a bit unfair. But then Godzilla vs. Kong got close to 500 million, so you can't really use that as an excuse. The Suicide Squad, James Gunn one, 167 million. So will it get a sequel? I don't know. I mean, I think it will, because it will just about break even with toy sales and Blu-rays and all that kind of stuff. But the power of hierarchy has definitely changed. And finally, The Rock has actually addressed that the power of the hierarchy in the DCU has changed. So when Black Adam was coming out and when The Rock was doing his press tour, he was almost talking like he was in charge of DC, because at that moment, no one was in charge. Now we know James Gunn and Pete Safran are in charge. Plans change. Whatever he was planning to do, it has to be run by James Gunn and Pete Safran, because they're the head of the studio. Sure, David Zaslav has somewhat of an input, but they're heads of the studio. So realistically, David Zaslav can say a bunch of stuff, but realistically, whatever The Rock and Seven Bucks Productions wants to do with Black Adam or any of them characters, I honestly can see Black Adam appearing in other people's movies. Now, I'm not saying it's not going to get a direct sequel, but I don't think the box office was big enough. And sure, it's cool. The Rock said that box office numbers aren't the end line for whether a franchise is successful. Yeah, sure, somewhat to a degree. But you got to understand, Warner Bros. Discovery is in major debt. They're trying to make money, not lose money. So your movies have to make money to get another movie. And just because it's The Rock, it doesn't mean anything in this situation. Had the movie done $600-700 million, then sure, The Rock would have somewhat a say. So whatever the future of the DC universe is, we will find out shortly from James Gunn. And yes, it will be before San Diego Comic-Con. 2023. Why do people think it will be that long? They've said it will come out soon. The news will come out in the next few months. Just hold your horse. So, whatever the plans with Superman going forward are, I don't think they're that indicative to whatever the Rock, Dwayne Johnson is saying. Because, yeah, we get it. The old regime, Walter Hamada and Cernoff, Toby Emmerich, they didn't want Superman. So I don't understand why The Rock keeps coming out with these massive lines. Like, there was no other Superman to bring back. Henry is our generational Superman. In my opinion, the greatest Superman. And I mean that respectively to the other actors. Respectively, Christopher Reeve. But Henry is the greatest Superman of all time. So I agree with what The Rock's saying. But The Rock doesn't really have any power. He doesn't have any say. Because whatever the plans were, there was supposed to be, you know, these super duper scoopers going, yeah, Man of Steel 2 is going to be announced. It's going to be confirmed. All this in October. But it wasn't confirmed. All that was confirmed was, and this was via an article, said that Roven is the producer. There's no script, there's no director. I mean, yeah, I get it. Henry Cavill is no longer Geralt on The Witcher. That does not mean that they're fast-tracking this movie at all. So yeah, there will be a Superman movie for sure. And I believe that Superman, Shazam, and Black Adam will meet each other. But whether we get Black Adam 2 is a different story. And whatever's going to happen in Man of Steel 2, everything has to go via James Gunn and Pete Safran. James Gunn, the creative side, Pete Safran, producing side. But he's still going to have somewhat of a say in what happens with these storylines and their 10-year plan. And David Zaslav, sure, is going to have a plan and he's going to have a say as well. But they would already been told what he's after. And we know it's already going to be indicative to Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and Warstu. We already know this. So The Rock can keep coming out saying these things. Like, yeah, we've got big plans for Superman. You've got no plans for Superman. Because whatever the plans are for Superman, it's down to the people who are head of the studios. So James Gunn was recently asked, are you attending CCXP in Brazil? Because as we know, The Flash is there, Shazam 2's there, Blue Beetle's there, and Aquaman 2's there. He says, I will miss my friends at CCXP this year. One of my favourite places in the world, but I am sadly too busy putting together the DCEU slate as well as finishing Guardians of the Galaxy. I miss you guys and hope you have the best time ever. So that's the Brazilian Comic-Con. So don't be expecting a huge announcement there because he's literally just said they are still putting it together. This is not going to be put together really fast like most people think. Like, we're talking months here. Like, we probably won't even hear till early next year at the earliest. And they don't have to tell us the plan. They obviously have to elaborate and kind of produce whatever they've found and whatever they've done and whatever they're planning to the WB Discovery executives and tell David Zaslav and all this kind of stuff. But it does make me laugh. It's going, yeah, Keaton's is returning, Batman Beyond. Oh man, Batman storyline. But it's like, no one knows. Henry Cavill Superman is going to be appearing in this TV show. No one knows. Yes, James Gunn recently came out and said the animation, the TV shows will all be canon. It will all be one singular timeline, somewhat similar to what Marvel has done over the last 10 years or so. But it also went as far to say, I mean, this isn't a direct quote from James Gunn. It also said the video games would be in the same timeline as whatever's going on in DCU. And I find that very fascinating. So when James Gunn keeps saying you've got no idea what you're doing, he realistically is reading between the lines when he says stuff. You've got to read between the lines. He's not saying you don't know nothing. He's saying, I don't want anyone putting stuff out there because it's rubbish until we tell you what's coming. Then you will know what's coming. And I wouldn't expect a DCEU slate to be revealed by them because we already know so many things that are in the works. Joker 2 is just about to start shooting. We know that. That's being confirmed. The Batman 2 with Matt Reeves, he's got a free-for-all, but that won't be coming out or at least shooting to at least like 2025. So we already know that there's so much stuff for the future of the DCEU. We know Henry Cavill will get a Superman movie. We know there most likely will be another Suicide Squad movie. We know Wonder Woman 3 is coming. We know that apparently James Gunn wants an increased role for Amanda Waller. That's clear. That's very clear. So we know everything's coming. Sure, they could throw in Zack Snyder's Justice League 2 and 3. James Gunn did recently say that not everything will be on the same timeline, essentially. And that's where stuff like Joker 2 sits in. That's where stuff like The Batman 2 with Matt Reeves and Robin Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz, that's where all that fits in. So yeah, they do want a cohesive singular universe, but they're still going to have these Elseworld stories lines. So there is still play for Zack Snyder's Justice League 2 and 3 if that's what they want. But seeing as Zack's got Rebel Moon allegedly 6 projects with that, and he's pretty much the top G, the Don over at Netflix. I would not be expecting anything from Zack Snyder in the next 4 or 5 years. And realistically, if they are going to do Zack Snyder's Justice League, then it has to happen pretty soon. It really does. Has to happen pretty soon. So the DCU will be connected across film and TV. That's been confirmed by the CEO. It doesn't really spawn the death of separated universes. He also said the animated stuff is going to combine with the DCU canon stuff, which I find it interesting. Direct quote. Yes, most definitely the DCU will be connected across film and TV and animation. So it's interesting. He also went on to say Booster Gold was the most requested character when he asked. But he also said, I'm not creating stories based on public vote, but I found it fascinating nonetheless. So that's cool. He's interacting. It wasn't like he was going to saying, yo, whoever's the most popular character, I'm going to bring him into the DCU. That's not what happened, but a lot of people thought that, but it's really cool that he is being active with the fans. He doesn't need to. You don't ever see Kevin Feige replying to tweets and stuff. He doesn't have to be. I just hope they don't try to emulate the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because that's what's so good about the DC Universe is we have the better character. The Flash, if done correctly, recast Ezra Miller, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. We've got so many cool characters. They just need to be used right. And seeing as James Gunn is a comic book fan, I have every faith in him. I have every faith in Pete Safran. Interesting enough, I got to spend some time with him at the Shazam premiere in England. I got to speak to him for about 5-10 minutes. Pretty interesting, very clever guy. Articulates himself very well. And he's very invested in DC. He knows the characters inside out. He may be a producer, but he knows what he's on about. So I have every faith in the DC universe being very great going forward. Do we need to restore the SnyderVerse? No, we don't. That does not mean I'm against Zack Snyder. We don't need to restore the SnyderVerse. James is friends with Zack. They have a conversation. The Snyder Cut Part 2 and 3 could come, if that's something they want to do, down the road. So like always, guys, check us out on Instagram at Warstu. Check us out on Twitter at WarstuG. And I will catch you in another video very soon. Catch you later.